Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into a single military deployment in the Middle East that has sparked two, radically different interpretations. One sees it as a strategic move on the world stage, while the other views it as the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy.
So, it all starts with this number. Somewhere between 2,500 and 5,000 U.S. Marines are reportedly being sent to the Middle East. Now, that's a pretty significant deployment, for sure. But the real story here isn't just what is happening. It's about why. And that's where things split into two completely different realities.
So, is this a calculated geopolitical chess move in an incredibly complex international conflict? Or is it a prophetic warning, a sign of something much, much bigger on the horizon? Today, we're going to explore both of those perspectives, pulling straight from the sources themselves. Okay, before we dive into those two realities, let's just anchor ourselves in the facts, the things that both sides actually agree on. This is the undisputed catalyst for everything else we're about to talk about.
This isn't just some routine troop rotation. We're talking about a major amphibious assault ship packed with Marines. It's a serious injection of military force into a region that's already, let's be honest, incredibly tense. This single action is the common ground from which two entirely different stories begin to grow.
All right, so let's put on our strategic lens first. For geopolitical analysts, this deployment really brings up one crucial question. Is this whole thing a move towards escalation, or is it actually a move towards de-escalation?
And boom, right away, we see a pretty stark contradiction. On the one hand, you've got these official statements suggesting the conflict is basically over. But on the other hand, you have the actual deployment of thousands of Marines, an action that, a lot of analysts are reading as a very clear escalation.
And the rhetoric around this whole thing is just as aggressive. This quote about hitting Iran's main oil export hub just for fun, it really underscores a very confrontational posture that doesn't exactly scream de-escalation, does it?
So, if we look a little deeper at the reported strategy, it seems to be this kind of delicate three-step dance. Step 1, neutralize threats like nuclear facilities, but do it surgically. Which brings us to step 2, avoid completely demolishing the country's infrastructure, to leave the door open for future trade deals. And finally, step 3 is all about sharing the burden, right? Pressuring international allies to help secure the super important Strait of Hormuz, which is a major choke point for global oil. This move really just highlights how tangled global politics can get. The US is repositioning its own ships while asking its allies for help. Iran is, remaining defiant, vowing to end the war on its own terms. And then there's this really complex twist. China is being asked for help in a region where it was supposedly sending missiles just a few weeks ago. It's a lot. Okay, now let's completely switch gears. The second way of looking at this deployment has nothing to do with geopolitical strategy. It's all about history, scripture, and seeing this event as an echo of a story that was foretold a long, long time ago. So the whole foundation of this interpretation is the idea that history repeats itself, and that biblical patterns can actually predict the future. In this view, the past isn't just the past, it's a roadmap for what's coming next. And central to this entire perspective is identifying America as a modern-day Babylon. Drawn from the book of Revelation, this interpretation sees the U.S. as this great power that's prophesied to fall, and fall suddenly. From this angle, events like the Marine deployment, they aren't just news headlines, they're the final warning signs. Now, if you follow this prophetic line of thinking, it leads to a whole cascade of pretty dire predictions for the near future. We're talking widespread civil unrest, the return of a military draft, and even the eventual collapse of Western nations. This interpretation actually concludes with an urgent call for believers to find safe havens before a prophesied cataclysm hits.
And here is where things get really fascinating. These two seemingly separate narratives, they actually converge on one single historical touchstone. It's remarkable, really. Both the strategic and the prophetic interpretations use the very same conflict as a key reference point, the Vietnam War. From that prophetic perspective, this parallel is almost literal. The claim is that the very same Marine brigade that was sent into the jungles of Vietnam is now being sent to the deserts of the Middle East. It creates this powerful, symbolic link right across the decades.
The comparison goes beyond the soldiers to the battlefield itself. The dense, difficult jungles of Vietnam are seen as a direct parallel to the harsh, mountainous deserts of Iran. Both are viewed as potential quagmires, these unforgiving environments that could trap a foreign army in a long, maybe even an unwinnable war. So all of this builds to a very specific fear that history is literally repeating itself.
The lessons from Vietnam are seen as this dire warning of a war that's supposed to be short but could drag on for years, of a government that might not be telling its people the truth, and of a conflict that could end without any clear victory. So here we are. We have two vastly different interpretations, one of cold, hard strategy, the other of ancient prophecy, and yet somehow they both arrive at the exact same conclusion. Both of these worldviews are defined by one powerful, shared feeling: profound uncertainty.
And this shared uncertainty leads to two very different calls to action. The strategic view basically advises patience, warning that we might not have any real clarity for weeks or even months. The prophetic view, though, interprets that same uncertainty as the final alarm bell, an urgent call to get ready for what's coming.
Ultimately, it really all boils down to this one question, a question raised in the sources themselves. It's the question that haunts both the geopolitical analyst and the prophetic watcher. How long is this actually going to last? And for now, well, nobody seems to have the answer.